You're listening to Chem Stories, a podcast series created by people with lived experience of P&P chemsex.
Hi, sweet beans. This is Captain Patrice speaking from the flight deck of Chem Stories Airlines. We're now in the third and final leg of our YUL Plurality flight. Montreal host Éric wraps up his conversation with Ali and Michael. Our flight plan forecasts discussions on the complex realities of the chemsex scene, the legal, social stakes for trans and gender diverse people, and the call to action for the community. Should you experience turbulence while listening to this podcast, please visit our list of resources and services related to P&P chemsex in the episode description and on chemstories.ca. Thank you for choosing Chem Stories Airlines, where the journey is always a trip.
I want to go back maybe just to what you were talking, Ali, about the security, because for me, security, when we talk about chemsex, also leads to the question of boundaries and consent. And you said, for example, that you were feeling more comfortable with people, you knew a bit that you knew that they would care for you and that probably you knew that they would not cross your boundaries. It's a big question and it can be a really sensitive question, but like when you're doing chemsex, how do you manage consent and do you know where to stop? Do you feel secure, basically, when you do chemsex in some context? Or sometimes do you feel like consent is not there?
At some point, I guess I was feeling secure. But one of the reasons why I tried to get help, is because I was putting myself on risk regarding the consent. My chemsex practices went from watching porn to having someone at home from the apps. Then I start leaving the house, kind of on a chasing quest. And then I just start spending 2 to 3 days on the street, just doing it with anyone who was available. And it put me a lot on risk because I think in several times I got abused. I just wasn't feeling like to continue the experience, but I didn't have the strength, I guess, to manage the situation. I wasn't mentally in a place where I was able to take control. So these persons didn't stop. So it was hard for me because I understood the risk I was putting myself on, and it wasn't kind of a nice experience anymore because you feel like ashamed and dirty. You want to understand how you went to that place and you were not able to manage it. And also for me was the element that was freaking me out the most is that I wasn't able to have the necessary information in my mind to get the details of what happened. So I know the situation I was, but I don't remember clearly the person, the time. So when I was trying to get help, some people were telling me, but you should go to the police. I know, but what am I going to say? I was high. I don't remember clearly. I just remember that this happened and that's it. Mm-hmm. And also I had physical harm that I was able to identify. Okay, this situation went too far. So
you had a pain that was...
I had pain. I was bleeding. Yeah, I was in a really bad state. So, but yeah, I guess that's one of the reasons why I start to ask myself, do you want to continue with this? Mm-hmm. Because now you're putting your life at risk. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I guess, I don't know, it's a very tricky... I guess that's what you have to choose the people you want to party with, because otherwise you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think the difficult thing is we talk about choosing, but at some point, like the way you're putting it, your journey, and for me it was the same. At some point I was not controlling its addiction. So basically I was not always able... Well, never. I was never at the end. I was not able to know when I needed to stop. And of course, if I was not stopping, then I was not also choosing the partners. And I was putting myself in trouble, basically. That's what you described. And of course, yeah, the risk I was taking were more and more, the more I was into the obsession and addiction, the more risk I was taking. And for me, I had this kind of same moment when I had a few moments when I said, okay, like I'm going on a path that now I'm putting myself at risk in many different ways. And it's been like a lot of those moments that kind of finally lead me to a kind of conclusion that I needed something to change. For a long time, I didn't know what it was, what I needed to change and how. But at some point, yeah, I found help and everything. And maybe that's where I would like to go after is like, we do know that, especially for gender diverse person, especially when you are a drug user and that you use drugs like crystal meth that are really, there's a big stigma around those drugs also. So we kind of have layers of stigma around us and around the drugs we take. And of course, it makes us really vulnerable. And I think even more in the times we're now, where we do know that like gender diverse people are targeted in many different ways. What do you think? What do you think we need basically like around those issues? Like what can we do at community level or at, of course, we would like to go political level, but like what do we need like for resources, information, and what would be the best thing you would like to see? For example, if something in Montreal that's not there, that would be great for trans people that are trying to manage their drug use.
Oh my God. Well, I think in general, from what I see, from my experience, what we need is more empathy and connection. We need to stop judging people because I'm someone who has been judged for, I guess, all my life. So, and what I discovered through this experience is that when you start creating meaningful connections and when you start meeting people who have empathy and who accept yourself as you really are, then everything that is addiction, stigmatization, criminalization goes to a second place. And that empowers the person to get the freedom and to feel the emptiness, which is the reason that they are using in the first place. Because we are in a community that is judging us, that is always telling us that we are not enough, that is forcing us to perform because especially now with social media, you have to be perfect. So you have right to make mistakes. And if you don't fit into that mold, then you are just marginalized. So I guess that's what we really need. We need to stop judging and to understand the story behind the people.
Mm-hmm. I think empathy is really important, but I'm the first person to be really critic about our community. But sometimes I think about the fact that I am a part of this community and that so are the other ones that maybe sometimes I can judge also for thinking that they're judging me. And then we kind of go in this circle of, and this community, when I meet them, like, for example, I do a lot of support group for people who deal with chemsex. And I talked a lot and I'm an artist, so I'm a playwright. So I did a play around it. And so people came to talk to me and, you know, we talked about like toxic masculinity and the gay culture and everything. But when I talk to those guys, they deal with the same problem that I deal with. Like basically we're all in the same thing. And even this gym guy that seems really perfect and that could look like the personalization of my problem of this toxic gay culture. But then if you go talk to this person, when I talk to him, I sometimes see the same insecurities, the same problems. And when I talk to them in a context of they're looking for help with their chemsex use, the good thing is that if they go to the point of reaching for help or at least understanding or at least harm reduction, maybe they don't want to stop, but they want to feel better in their using. It opens a thing where you can get access to the person. So chemsex is an opportunity for me, for our community to access something. Because like we talked before, it's a solution. So why does so many people need this solution? I think this is the question we need to ask ourselves. And what do we do? Like, why not kind of give true resources for organization who try to do something for this issue? And I think we had a lot of opportunities in our community to address some kind of general and community trauma that we have regarding, for example, the HIV crisis or other things like, and the HIV crisis was one of the occasion. It was a terrible crisis, but it was also a moment where we can all kind of get together and look at a problem and find common solution. And I think we need to rally around chemsex like that. We kind of need to talk about it and say, listen, and I've been talking about it a lot like that sometimes, but like me against the community. So I use chemsex because the community was doing that to me, but I was also doing it to other people because I'm part of this community. So we're all together. And I think if we bring this togetherness, this empathy, like you were saying, and just like rally around it, because I'm actually sad to see like how sometimes people dealing with chemsex are abandoned. And I understand why, because it's really like someone really struggling deep in addiction is difficult to manage. As a community, I would be really happy to see us not kind of letting go of this, because we're losing a lot of people to drugs. Some people die, but some people just disappear also, and we're losing them. And the mental health are going down and everything. So I think, yeah, I would like to see a true like organized community response. But I do think for that, we need also a kind of political recognition of the problem, which we really don't have. I'm still amazed that to this day, we don't have even something that is close from a kind of provincial or national public health guidelines around queer health. Like it just doesn't exist. Queer health, not chemsex, just like in general, like a political like strategy at the provincial level in Quebec around like queer health. Like what are the issues? What do we do? How do we fund that? It's not there. So I'm like, okay, now I'm getting angry. But I'm pissed. I'm pissed because I think like the opioid crisis, like chemsex, if like so many people are dying or struggling, and if cis person or children or any other population was dying in the numbers we see right now because of drug use, there would be like, it would be a national crisis and millions of dollars would be injected in this. And like you would have national campaigns on TV, and we don't have like close to anything like that. So, okay. So I think this is what I would wish actually to have. And maybe, yeah, if I want to close like, and not asking you for like solutions, maybe just for yourself. What are your hopes for your future? What do you want in your life, in your sex life, in your trans life? What do you wish for? Maybe, Michael.
I think just like breaking out of like the stigma and like the shamefulness that it's like imposed on trans people in general, and just being able to like authentically show up and like be yourself unapologetically. And like, I don't know, I feel like that's also a solution in a lot of ways, because it's like visibility. And if you're just going to show up authentically, like people are going to have to like accept it or deal with it or tolerate it, you know? Like it creates a conversation. It creates like, I don't know, like if we hide ourselves away and we like don't talk about these things and we like live in shame, then the problem is never going to solve itself. Yeah. I think people need to like hear other people's stories and like connect and have like representation, and yeah.
And I think you're really right. And do you think that is exactly what the conservative right is understanding, that the most we hear our stories, the most like we get accepted, and they don't like that. And so that's why maybe they're trying to kind of put us into fear so that we shut up.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like queer people have always been silenced, and like that's what they want, because I mean, yeah, like then the problem's hidden and they can like continue like harming our community.
Yeah, sometimes I think that people who are against queer people, they don't really want us to not exist. They just don't want to see it. They don't like that we're here and visible.
It's also like just a distraction in a lot of ways too. Like it's like we're going to focus on this non-issue so that we don't have to deal with real issues.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're completely right. I think some like politicians are really using that as a smokescreen, like something to kind of, yeah, mask their ugly politics that they're doing behind our backs. Yeah. And Ale, what do you want for your future life? What can we wish you?
Oh my God. I think I'm going to be a little bit aggressive with what I'm going to say. I would like to see people do whatever the fuck they want as long as they are happy, as long as they don't create harm to other people. And I guess what I want to see is just, I don't know, to see people to be open to educate themselves, to understand that not everyone has to follow a pattern. And I say this not only for the trans community, but for the gay community. Because at the end, we have been suffering because we haven't been able to show, once again, our real identity. Because the issues on the gay community is mostly because of insecurities. And that's why you see the big guy, the beautiful guy who have the same issues than anyone else. So for the trans community and non-binary as well, I think what have changed right now is that we got tired and we start a conversation. This is our reality. We exist and we have the right to exist. I think what have to change in the gay community is these are our insecurities. This is why we are struggling. And this is what we really want to change. And start following the pattern that I think has been followed for years, that you have to be perfect, that you have to go to the gym 7 times a day, that, start breaking the mold to create a change. Because something that is really ironic for me is that we are asking for acceptance, but we discriminate within ourselves. So already there, it doesn't make sense. So I guess I would like for my future just to be respected as I am as a person. And that if I'm, in my case, an immigrant, I speak a different language, I have a different gender identity, I have a different body, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting because I wanted to kind of segue to what is the main question of this podcast that we're doing of Chem Stories is why is it important for folks with chemsex lived experience to tell their stories in their own words? And when you were sharing, I was just thinking about that, the fact that that's exactly why, is because your story is so uniquely you. And I think when we hear your story, then we cannot not respect it. And because then we know, and I think that's why it's important we have these kind of all the spectrum of experiences at the table. So you're HIV positive, Ali, and
yes.
You talk about it like to people. And I wanted to know, do you make a connection between HIV, chemsex, gender identity? How these 3 parts of you kind of connect together?
Well, for me, the way I see it is like, I used to say, what is a black line for a tiger? Because normally, especially when I was trying to engage with someone, I had a lot of information to provide. So I guess at some point, and I guess it's related to protect myself, when you are looking for your gender identity or for your identity in general, you try to be as much honest as you can, because that's what's going to make you feel good with yourself. So, and that's what I'm vocal about who I am. For me, the connection, I guess it would be like, I try to reduce the negative consequences that this experience could have on me. And something really important relating HIV I understood is that a little bit as consent. If I wasn't open about it, it could come back to me with prison, for example.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a delicate situation because some people who are engaging with you, they don't necessarily care. But when I engage in this encounter where I was abused, the counselor I spoke with, he told me that it would be appropriate to try to manage the situation, because in the future, if I'm not, I guess, honest with my status, that's something that could happen. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, you mean that, of course, you talk about the fact that in Canada, the HIV non-disclosure is still criminalized.
That's it.
Which is really hugely problematic. But just to understand, so you were saying that it kind of made you realize that you had to be like, to disclose and to be like fully honest the most you can.
Yeah, because what happens is that at some point you can go from being the victim to be
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I know what you mean. Yeah.
the criminal one.
Yeah. And so in context of chemsex, of course, the disclosure of the HIV status is in some way, I think like the chemsex scene is really like there's a lot of HIV positive people doing chemsex. So it's hugely normal to kind of disclose, and people talk about more than in the general queer population, people talk about their status and if they're positive or undetectable and everything. But yeah, what you're getting to is also the fact that if you're not in a position to disclose it, or if in some context you don't do it, then you put yourself at risk.
Exactly.
Even more.
That's exactly.
Yeah.
And also, you asked something related to gender identity or to identity. From my experience, I don't know, some people, when they are not happy with you, they try to use it against you as well. Just letting you know that you're different or not validating you as a person. So I guess for me, the healthiest way to go through the experience and not harming myself emotionally or psychologically was just showing myself as I really was as much as possible. Because then I had the power of my story. So.
One of the main reasons why I wanted to do this episode and this conversation with you was that I know and I've seen trans and gender diverse people in the chemsex scene, but we never hear them. And yeah, for being in like having been in CMA rooms and other support group and a lot of like whatever podcast or articles and medias, and we don't hear them. And because I think what you shared is really important. The isolation is really stronger in the trans and gender diverse community. And yeah, this is the reason why I wanted to do this conversation, because I said, I know, like, it's not because you don't see them that they're not there. And I do hope that this podcast can reach a couple of them. That would be really amazing. Yeah. Thank you so much for participating and sharing that.
Yeah, I feel like there's like a lack of harm reduction approaches when you're like trying to seek help in like groups or stuff like that. And it can be like some people don't want to be fully sober, or that's like not where they're at. And it can become like even more shameful. And like, yeah, I feel like that's something that kind of pushed me away from like accessing help or like community too.
Yeah, completely. And yeah, I mean, when I started doing chemsex back in 2011, there was only like anonymous groups like CMA and things like that. So for me, it really saved my life because it was the only place where I could talk about it. But then now the good thing, which if we want to go into good things, is that now groups like Réseau are offering like support group that are not based on abstinence or sobriety. So at least in Montreal, which like it's not the case, of course, when you go in other cities and smaller towns, which is it's sometimes it's really more difficult. But now we kind of see a lot more diverse offer, I would say, of support, which is really good. But it's still like way like there's a lot of progress to be done there, especially because there is still to this day like no dedicated space to like people like dealing with chemsex. Like you don't, where do you go? It's not clear. But yeah, and I think harm reduction is, I mean, it's so important because yeah, like you said, some people won't go sober. They don't want that. Or even people who maybe one day will try to go sober. I mean, I went to CMA groups in 2014 for the first time, but I became sober in 2019. Like I was there because I was there and I was going in and out and everything because it was a group where at least I had some people I could talk to, but I was really not ready. I was not hearing what they were telling. Basically, I was not ready to hear this message. It was not for me at the time. So during that time, it would have been amazing for me to have also other resources and other things and everything. And I think for people who clearly don't want to go to this path, I think the best thing is to have really a lot of different paths so that you can, like, the net is going to be tighter. And so we're not going to lose so many people. If there's a lot of cords in the net, then we give a safety net to the majority of the community. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Hallie. Thank you, Michael, for sharing so openly and so freely and so generously. It was really a pleasure to have you. And well, there's a lot of other episodes you can listen to, so you can just go and dive into different podcasts. We have like 2 other conversations by people from Montreal, and we have also conversation from people from Toronto and Halifax. So you can go listen to all of them. And surely in one or many of those, you will find people talking about things that you will relate to. And yeah, thank you so much for being there, you two. And
Thank you, Éric.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
no, pleasure.
Attention all passengers, Captain Patrice speaking. Prepare for landing. We're making our final descent on our YUL Plurality flight, and that concludes our stopover in Montreal, the City of Saints. Thank you for choosing ChemStories Airlines as we're continuing our exploration of lived experiences with PNP chemsex. Before we depart for our next and last destination, Halifax, we invite all passengers back to the community lounge to meet our upcoming Halifax guests. More compelling stories await. Subscribe to stay updated. If you've encountered turbulence while listening to this podcast, please refer to our list of resources and services related to PNP chemsex in the episode description and on chemstories.ca.